Good to see all of you today. Thanks again to our VP of Marketing, Brian Marcus, who's done an incredible job pulling this event together. His whole team has just sprinted for you guys. Hope you enjoy every ounce of it. How many of you are familiar with that opening number? Like the real one? It's a Seattle band, actually. And it's maybe a little bit different mood than we had last year. Who remembers last year? Yeah, okay. Maybe like fireworks and streamers. And this year was a little bit more reflective, right, on what has happened over this past year. I want to dig in on that a little bit with you guys today. There is a reason that this really is one of the best marketing events in the world, I believe. And most of you that have come multiple years have seen that to be true. It's because of the people in this room. You guys are incredible, some of the most intelligent, passionate, innovative people that I've ever had the chance to work with. So all the tuners here, of course, but everyone across this industry has felt like a family to us, and it's created a career and a home for me and for my team. So I just want to say thank you for bringing such excellence to this place. Welcome to Seattle. We're going to have, I think, some better weather toward the afternoon. That's usually how we do it, by the way. We kind of make it nice and gloomy for the morning to go with your coffee, and then we're going to kind of transition the second half of the day. We have some amazing stuff happening in this city. If you haven't spent much time here, obviously we're the home to some of the biggest tech giants in the world, with Amazon, Microsoft, T-Mobile, some of the biggest brands like Starbucks, REI, Costco, Expedia. You guys are tremendous, and we hope that by bringing people from all over the world here today, that we can just amplify the conversation even further and think about ways that we can impact the world even more. I mean, Seattle's it's less than 1 million people in the city and less than 4 million in the whole metro area. So think about what this city's been able to do with that kind of population. Also, I do hope you'll start thinking about now what you want to do on Friday. In the early morning, definitely get your meetings knocked out. In the afternoon, there's so many different events going on. People that have boats, people that have events at the Mariners, all kinds of things. So start talking, figuring out what you're going to do, because it has turned into a real industry explosion. So today, for my keynote, you've known from previous years, this is not like a product demo. So that's not the plan for today. Really, I want to talk about where we are as an industry together, talk about sort of where we've come and where we're going, and then share a little bit about the vision of Tune and how we apply ourselves to that. So, got to take a little trip down memory lane first. Last year, these were 3 of the main concepts that we talked about. We talked about the move away from the install as the dominant metric of mobile and user acquisition, and a broadening of that, and especially how we all wanted to impact that over the coming years. So we'll think about how we did. We talked about the shared responsibility of fraud between ad partners and marketers and how we were going to tackle this problem together. And lastly, we talked a lot about people-centric marketing. Or people-based marketing. And I want to think about what that phrase means to us a year later. The almighty install. Last year, we were still talking about sort of some of the outrageous spending behaviors and scale against the install alone without really understanding LTV, without even understanding fraud oftentimes. Lots of VC dollars just getting pumped in and pumped out the other side. And with the demand that was coming from marketers just for pure CPIs, ad networks and partners, they ponied up and just tried to provide every ounce of scale that they could. And that doesn't always create the best behavior. Since last year, I am excited to say that there are at least a couple of indicators that show a little bit of a shift in direction from the front end to something a little bit deeper. Number 1, we have had amazing growth in re-engagement. Re-engagement campaigns have nearly replaced install campaigns for some of our customers. We find now that 78% of all marketers using Tune are measuring re-engagement specific campaigns. That's insane. That is more than 3 times what we saw even a year ago. Half of our 25 top spenders, our biggest customers, are now giving more than 50% of their budgets to re-engagement. And 24 of the 25 are really, really investing heavily. This is not like a few folks figuring it out. This is a shift of the entire industry, and dozens are continuing to move majority of their spends into engagement and re-engagement down funnel. Another major thing that we found out about was reinstalls. I don't know if you saw a report on reinstalls and now the reporting that we do in our platform of reinstalls, but it's just the beginning of understanding this really interesting user behavior. Certainly we've thought about uninstalls. We don't like it when people leave us, but what is this weird behavior where someone installs, does something, goes away, deletes the app off their phone, reinstalls? I mean, obviously it made sense to us for a long time. We thought, well, this is certainly an issue of an emerging market device. Maybe it just doesn't have the capacity. They don't want to have too many apps on their phone. But the reality is it's across the board. It's across every country and region. And it averages at around 43% of total installs are actually reinstalls. That sounds like something that's pretty purposeful, like something that's actually a part of the user experience. It should teach us something about what's happening in re-engagement. As a marketer, you might respond to this somehow by saying, maybe I'm going to enable something for my customers to do immediately once they have done a reinstall. It's a little different than a first-time install, or like we would have treated it before as just another open of an app. Recognizing maybe that the customer has been to your app before, say hello again, right? Give them some kind of unique message. Explain what might have changed since the last time. Maybe you made some improvements, and maybe that was the reason they decided to delete in the first place. These are all things that marketers should be thinking about, and on top of it, we should be thinking about what's the actual value of a reinstall. It's different than an install, and it's different than an open. And it's definitely a meatier, heavier type of re-engagement. So let's talk about how we did with fraud. How do you guys think we did over the last year? Like really think about what was going on in fraud a year ago. Yeah? I think we actually made quite a few advancements. One evidence of that is that our teams are often on the very front lines of disputes. Maybe some of you have worked with us on some of these disputes where there are issues of an advertiser wanting to claw back on something, or there's a disagreement of reconciliation about how many installs were provided or what kind of value of the traffic there was. And we've seen that number of disputes go smaller over time, especially the size of contribution of those disputes and also how quickly things are caught before they are allowed to drag on, right? And that means that technology is helping people see very early and in real time, this doesn't look quite right. Maybe I should start talking to my partner now versus waiting. And the same thing for partners. Now that partners are getting data back about what looks like low quality, what looks like it might be deceptive or detected as fraud deterministically, now maybe they can optimize against that and they can start to work on that in real time. So I really do believe over the last year we've come a long way. That said, we have a long way to go. This virtuous cycle we showed last year, we talked about how the marketer is able to automate some of these fraud recommendations, of course, through their tools, through Tune, and then they can identify the fraud, they can act on fraud, and then they can align that with their partners. And at the same time, partners are monitoring traffic and enforcing these fraud rules, and this conversation is happening in the middle. That has to continue happening at even a greater rate. We have to continue to open up that conversation, and we've got to start providing more tools, and I'm going to talk about that later. We did push very, very hard over the last year. I would say not just Tune, but everybody in the industry that is providing software is trying to figure out how can we get to the best granularity. We focused on getting everything down to the sub-publisher level. We built automated rules for making real-time decisions on that suspicious traffic. And most importantly, we built the first system to make those rulings transferable to advertising partners. So it's still a work in progress, and we have a lot to do. And it's still being driven by this need for demand. I need it. It really is something marketers need, demand. Are you feeling it, right? Our industry does not have a demand problem, okay? We do have a supply problem. And that is an enormous opportunity, and we have to figure out how are we going to meet that demand as an industry. Lastly, the most popular phrase really was people-based marketing, people-centric marketing. You heard it all the time. You heard it in the major advertising platforms. You heard it with the major MarTech stacks. It was all about people-based. And though I think the intention was good, like we want to understand our customer. We want to know what their journey looks like. We want to see everything they did from A to Z so that we can create a better, more valuable experience. The problem is we just sort of piled everything up and piled a bunch of data onto one user row so that we could try to understand this, and then we didn't really apply a lot of great action or a lot of great value. In fact, Tune rebuilt our entire database to support this people-based approach, and I'm glad that it also provided an enormous amount of value from our efficiency and our speed and our scale capacity. But we found that many marketers, even once they started to contribute to that database, weren't really using it on the user level, on the customer level, as much as we hoped. So I think maybe this obsession around people-based marketing, it was just maybe a little bit tweaked or a little bit flawed. And then we saw this, right? And I think this is part of the reflection that I'm talking about, in going through that opening number, is that, man, consumers have woken up all over the world trying to understand what is all this data that's collected about me, what does it mean for me. Of course, we saw the Cambridge Analytica stuff and cyber attacks, email hacks, like the list just kind of went on and on and on. And it's really a disconnect between what's being collected about me and why, like what's it really used for. I do think part of it was a little bit of negligence, a little bit of laziness, that we built all of these profiles up without a whole lot of ideas about how were we gonna self-regulate? How are we gonna make sure that everything was gonna be kosher and taken care of for the consumer? Today, I get emails like this every day. Has anybody, I'll read it first, and then I wanna see how many have seen an email like this. Good morning, Peter. I hope you had a great weekend. Not sure if you're familiar with Blank, but we provide identity solutions to the marketing ecosystem. We have access to over 252 million US deterministic user profiles, which clients license in raw form. Leverage our proprietary identity graph used for onboarding or audience extension, all depending on any needs you might possibly have. Not sure if you're the correct person to chat. No, you're not the right person for me to chat with. But this is like super common. This is happening all the time. I was at Cannes a few weeks ago, and this is supposed to be the advertising conference. Cannes Lions is like the height of the best storytelling that's been done in advertising. And on my right, it's two DMPs talking about mashing their users together, and on my left is someone talking about how many IDFAs they can sell to a game publisher. And I'm just like, wow, this has really changed, really a lot. So certainly there's something here that we need to be retrospective about. And I hope that this becomes a topic of conversation over the next couple of days, that we start thinking about what can we do to make this better. Instead of thinking about how each data interaction solves for a customer, instead we should be thinking about how each data interaction solves for a customer need. So every time that we pull data, there's a reason, there's a purpose, there's something that we're connecting that to, and it makes sense to the customer. And I would say the easiest thing is certainly in sort of first-party relationships, when you've done something with a publisher and then you've converted with an advertiser, it makes a lot of sense to the consumer that the publisher knows that you converted on this advertising platform. What we have to figure out is all the stops in between and make it really, really clear how this stuff is being managed. Now we have kind of all collected mountains of data. We've got tons and tons and tons. And I do think that we don't know what we're going to do with most of it. We haven't really built out like what is the actual use case for our customer with some of these big, these huge warehouses. And one example of this I can think of is that we had the assumption that if you took all of your data about your advertising and marketing attribution, and you took all of your data about your marketing automation, and you took all of your data about your CRM and everything that's ever happened, in the history of your customer, you'd be able to put together these like really unique personalized situations where because this person saw this ad and then downloaded and then uninstalled and then saw this marketing effort from your internal team, and then they decided to come back and they made a purchase, that we would use all that information to say, oh my gosh, we're so glad that you came to us from this exact path and this exact funnel, and you were able to provide something unique to them. And you can see even the breakdown of the logic as I was explaining that whole thing. Like, what is the value? What are you really going to bring to the customer based on smashing all that data together? So if you're going to connect attribution data, for example, and marketing automation data, it needs to be clear, like what's the connection point? What actually is going to drive up success? What's going to create a better experience for the customer? And I would say, over this last year, I think the industry has changed its tune. How often do you hear the term people-based and people-centric, right? It's kind of like moved to the background just a little bit. I would like to say that all marketing should be people-considerate, right? All marketing data should be collected for clear intent. And that's the beautiful thing about data is we can show a customer, because you decided to do this with us, we are able to provide this to you, right? It should be an if this then that that's 1 to 2 steps that's super clear. If I collected data, it should be clear, and it should have an understood purpose. Okay, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because this is a controversial place to spend time. There is something to think about in the world of persistent identifiers. When we have persistent identifiers that work across all platforms, then of course that identifier means something to you or to anyone, even if you've never had contact with that customer. So I would challenge us as an industry to think about what is a format that we can regulate ourselves on so that an identifier only means something to us if we have had some kind of interaction with that consumer. All right, that's all the heavy stuff for a moment. I'll let you take a breath. That kind of covers where we've come from and describes some of the introspection I think we should all be having. For the rest of the time, I want to talk about the key elements of what's next for all of us, whether it's marketers, partners, networks, publishers, platforms, and these are the 2 key areas I want to spend time on: automation and relationships. I believe that if we, as a whole marketing ecosystem, tackle these really well and really efficiently, not only will we spend time doing the things we should be doing as humans, relegating tasks that should be automated to machines, but we're also going to find that scale that we all have been looking for. Obviously, all of us need to embrace automation. Jobs are being replaced, all kinds of jobs. You can go and look up all the cool ways that machines are replacing jobs, from lawyers to journalists, drivers, chefs, financial analysts, telemarketers, medics. All of these folks, there's been sort of fear articles about how these industries are going to be completely replaced. And I typically take the more positive view that, yes, we're going to bring more automation to these places, but that means that humans get to run after things that are more human and machines run after things that are more machine, at least for the next 10 years before the singularity happens. Not a prediction. So, yeah, it is coming here, and it's coming faster than ever. And so why not marketers? Why not most of our tasks be taken away from us as well? I do want to think about what's already changed, right? What's already happened in the world of automation. And honestly, these folks have led the pack. Google and Facebook have really thought through how can we make things as much push button as we possibly can so that we can drive the best possible performance. The folks at Google have been working on this UAC product, for a couple of years, and we saw the start of it, and many marketers were very skeptical, and now many are seeing the results, and they're thinking, man, it kind of is optimizing a little better than I would have. And that's the point, that especially these big first-party platforms, they should be automating this as much as possible. And marketers shouldn't be spending all of their time tinkering around with these campaigns, right? There are machines that can do this, and they can do it quite effectively. What else will machines automate in the future in marketing? Well, how many of you would say that you spend 25% of your time in operations, marketing ops? Okay. Okay, some honest people out here. There's a lot that's going to get automated here. And of course, we need to be close to the platforms and understand the technologies that will automate it. But reconciliation, invoicing, payments, fraud detection, campaign launching, all of these things should be automated. In the area of market research, there are many companies now automating this so that you can understand audiences and understand how they react to all kinds of things. Audience analysis, proximity-based insights, deep behavioral and lookalike audiences, all this kind of stuff is becoming more and more and more automated. Even content creation. This one's like really creepy to me because I'm a writer and I believe that all good marketers should be writers. That's just a thing. But there are a lot of areas where writing itself is being replaced. 4 or 5 years ago, there were 3,000 to 4,000 articles that were being written by AI. Now that number's grown by 5 times. Many of the news articles you may find yourself reading might not have actually been read by written by a human. There are even some people that say within 10 years, machines will write novels, which is pretty wild. Novels that will land themselves in bestseller lists. In the area of partnerships, we already talked about how the largest ad platforms honestly can automate a lot of this, right? Because it's one credit card, it's one account, get going and launch. And that is definitely something that you need to commit to and you need to be a part of. So I am saying, jump into automation with both feet. Don't be afraid. Don't be scared it's going to make you lose your job. If you're repeating a task every single day, you should think about why. Is there a way that it can be replaced? That's part of what we want to help our customers do. We want to look at what's that last mile? What's that little thing, that little box, that one click you're continually having to do every single day? And let's replace it. Let's push really hard for it. Free your time as a marketer and be a human marketer. So what will be difficult to automate? Well, in operations, not much. Yeah, there are going to be still a lot of small tasks, but you should expect for us to try to automate as many of those as possible. In the area of research, machines learn faster from data, but they often miss the context of culture. I'm excited about this keynote that we're going to have at the end of the day, because that's kind of diving into the power of data, but how without the right context, the right cultural connection, the right view from the customer's seat, it can lose an enormous amount of effectiveness. Let's see a little clip from Tricia.
So this is all really interesting to me because I'm a technology ethnographer. I study and I advise companies on the patterns of how people use technology. And one of my interest areas is data. Data are to me what stars are to astronauts. I mean, data is practically its own language. We communicate through data. We make decisions with data. And that's why people say we live in the age of data-driven decision-making. But it is pretty cool that we live in an age where we can get all this feedback from our activity trackers to affordable genetic testing. So why is having more data not helping us make better decisions? Especially for companies who have all these resources to invest in these big data systems. Why isn't it getting any easier for them?
I'm going to let that be a question mark for you. So put a pin in that, and we're going to learn a lot more about that at the end of the day. In the world of content creation, you've got to say, what's the unexpected story? What is the thing that just captures minds? What's a different slant or a different take? I definitely got to play a clip from James Veach because this guy comes at it from a totally different point of view. How do we think about the scammers and interacting with the weird, odd, strange things about marketing in our world?
A few years ago, I got one of those spam emails. And it managed to get through my spam filter. I'm not quite sure how, but it's turned up in my inbox, and it was from a guy called Solomon Odonka. I know. It went like this. It said, hello, James Veach. I have an interesting business proposal I want to share with you, Solomon. Now, my hand was kind of hovering on the delete button, right? As you are, I was looking at my phone. I thought, I could just delete this. Or I could do what I think we've all always wanted to do. And I said, Solomon, your email intrigues me.
So good. His delivery is phenomenal. But
and
that
the game was afoot.
That is part of what we as marketers and humans can bring to the table. So much of content is also going to be performance. It's going to be video. It's absolutely going to be production, right? So marketers are going to learn more about this. You're going to spend more time working with video producers probably than you ever have. And you're going to be trying to find characters and experiences that are unique and truly human. Obviously, this is probably an area I'm going to focus on. Partnerships. Growing real human relationships is something that machines will have a little bit of a tougher time to do in the next 10 years, though the Turing test is approaching quickly. It is something that, as the CEO of this company, I fly around the world constantly shaking hands with people in the flesh, in person, because there really is still no substitute for building great partnerships. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about unlocking growth with marketing relationships. Remember when I started this out, I said we're going to talk about automation and we're going to talk about relationships. At Tune, we believe the nature of publishing and advertising supply is fragmented and it's always growing. Now, a lot of people would debate this with you. They would say, well, no, eventually there's going to be one world order, and one company is going to own all of advertising, and that's the only place anyone is ever going to advertise, so deal with it. It hasn't happened yet, and I'm one of the hopeful ones that says it's always going to expand, it's going to continue to fragment, it's going to continue to change, because there's always some new publisher that is not connected to a platform that provides something that people just love, right? That human storytelling content thing I just talked about, right? Something that excites people. So that's always going to be there. And at the same time, there's going to be new platforms, there's going to be new experiences, always rising up and always disrupting. For the first time, we do see a little bit of a decline in the predicted future of the total market share from the top two providers, Facebook and Google. That doesn't mean that their revenue is declining. It actually means that the whole industry is expanding, right? And that more and more publishing is coming about. One of the reasons that this graph looks this way, or at least that eMarketer proposes, is the rise of advertising with Amazon. But we're seeing it across so many different publishers, whether it's Snap or Twitter, like all of these are contributing to a more fragmented, more diverse landscape. And that's a wonderful thing, because building out more relationships and less dependencies is something that can help to differentiate you. Opportunities are growing, new channels are emerging, and there is a world that's untapped. And we have to believe that way. So let's talk about the everyone else for a second. There's a lot of doomsday all the time about ad networks are being consolidated, they're going away, or there's so much difficulty in our industry that it's going to be hard for them to make it through certain things of privacy or whatever it is. I tend to be of the mind that what ad networks bring to the table is management and connection to supply that others don't have, and they help you find scale quickly because they've done all that work. They have done some of the work for the marketer already. And that is the same like an agency does the same thing, right? And people keep saying, oh, agencies are going away. Well, they might stop doing certain tasks, but I promise you there will be people that help manage other tasks for you in the future. And whether you call them an agency or whatever you want to call them, there are going to be these entities. And these entities are very, very valuable. You know why? They are the delta between automation and first-party relationship. They are doing now with people and teams what many machines will do in the future, and then they will move on to the next thing and scale up the next thing and make it an opportunity for marketers in the next phase. They've done it over and over and over again, and they really are the lifeblood of understanding what is the first thing that needs to happen for performance marketing to take flight, and then how are we going to scale that massively? And then once we've scaled it massively, then how do we teach machines to do it? I will say that these folks got to get great at some things. They got to get great at this, understanding this first-party connection. We are moving to a first-party world. Like it or not, this is where we're going. That does mean getting into deep linking and universal linking, understand how that works with your inventory. That does mean getting transparent feeds of first-party performance, even if that is redacted, and how is targeting going to work in a first-party world. All of those things ad networks are going to need to be great at. Goes without saying, but better fraud management is absolutely something that's going to happen. And that also falls on folks like us at Tune to bring more of the tools into those parties to help them scale. And the most important thing of all, finding supply that others can't find. That means looking to new channels, finding things beyond in-app, seeing what's on the horizon. That is what ad networks are great at. I love this slide from Terry at Luma. I wish he was here today. He loves a little performance. This is hilarious. So spring 2018, GDPR will kill data-driven advertising. And in summer 2018, we can see all of these billion-dollar valuations and exits. Some of the most outrageous ad tech exits and raises that we've ever seen in our industry. So clearly there is value. Clearly the ecosystem is fragmented. There are another dozen that aren't on this list that I know are going to be. Absolutely. So in order for marketing partnerships to have real value, they need to be differentiating. And as a marketer, you should be looking for the partnerships that your competitors don't have. Start looking for them now. That means sometimes you're going to need technology yourself to help with these partners. You need some way to scalably manage a lot of partners. You know, imagine going to your finance person and say, yep, we're going to kick off 100 new partners next week. And they're like, 100 new vendors? No, that's not going to happen. You need a system and technology that's going to help you scale those up, and that's going to be part of our focus at Tune. You need to think about outside of the box. You need to think outside of traditional partners. Whether you are a network or whether you are a marketer going direct, whatever you are, you have to think about your business development partners, influencers, affiliates, power users and referrals, direct publishers, live events. You definitely should be thinking about OTT. Think outside the box of what you know all of your competitors are already buying on. So how can we manage and scale all these partnerships? It is kind of crazy. We are going to need a bit of automation, and we're going to need a bit of software. Unlike the relationships themselves, we will replace a lot of the logistics and a lot of the operations of these things. And that is what we do at Tune. This year, you will see us doubling down on building technology that helps the ecosystem manage and scale relationships. It's what we've always done, and we see it as the greatest area of opportunity for marketers and their partners to differentiate themselves. So we are going to push hard in this direction, and this is our central vision. There are 5 main areas of innovation we're going to concentrate on, and I'm going to fly through these, I promise. But number 1 is links. They are the greatest divide between publishers and advertisers, and it doesn't necessarily mean only Tune links. It means any links in the ecosystem to help facilitate what happens from the ad to the outcome. That stuff has to be rock solid and easy to manage. Fraud automation launched across our products. Anything that you see in TMC, you'll be seeing in Has Offers. Management automation. Sorry. Management, bulk actions. Whether you're a network or you're a marketer, you want to be able to do bulk actions across lots of partners all at once. There needs to be more to help you approve, to block, to cap publishers over time, without having to log into a system every single time to get that done. Performance automation. That's something that we've never really provided in our products until this year. We made an acquisition of a company called Optimob, and it was our first foray into helping anyone using our products do this conversion automation across their publishers. It's live and has offers today, and you should be already paying attention to this if you're not as a network. And we're going to continue to iterate, and we're going to learn about how that works for our customers moving forward. And lastly, it's in the world of logistics. Reconciliation and payments seem like a simple thing that shouldn't take up too much time. We find that marketers and their teams and their operations teams spend way too much time running down, how much to pay who, how to reconcile, how to deal with rate cards, all these things. We have teams right now that are working on these to provide in the coming quarter. So this is the simplified vision of Tune. It is about marketing relationships. It means helping all of our customers and partners take advantage of the functionality we're building across our products to build something that's differentiating in these relationships. Your job, run hard and fast after automating every possible operational task that you can, but do this while finding the gold in these new relationships. And that's really what this conference is all about. Postback is kind of a homecoming for us, I would say. It's actually the real line from that song earlier is, "I'm on my way back to where I started." And in a lot of ways, that's what's happening for us at Tune as a company. What our DNA has always been is building technology to help partners work better with marketers and the reverse. And we want to unlock that for all of us. If you're not familiar with why it's called Postback, it's something, a Postback itself is something that we coined in this mobile marketing ecosystem to describe the server-to-server relationship between a marketer and their partner. It tells the partner this was the performance, right, of a campaign. Well, Postback is designed to be that human-to-human connection, that human-to-human relationship that unlocks performance and unlocks success. So I hope that you will look at it this way. And I hope that you look at today and tomorrow as some of the most valuable time you spend as a human marketer for the next year. These are relationships that you build that can't be replaced, that can't be automated. I hope you spend some time and enjoy them. And as our first value at Tune says, please be excellent to each other. Thank you all. Thanks for coming.